Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Leadership Lunch Chat. I'm Jennifer Wilson, and with me today is my good friend Amy Better. Hey, Amy.
Hello.
Hi. And so, Amy and I thought that we would, because we process challenges and issues facing the profession, but also facing us, we thought that we would talk about something that's coming up a lot lately, and maybe it's coming up sometimes for us, but also we're talking about it a lot with people we're coaching, and that's anxiousness, uh, fear, lack of confidence, imposter syndrome, feeling like we're not going to be successful. Maybe that's the way to say it. Wondering if things are going to be okay or if we're up to it or whatever it is that creates this sort of anxiousness or tightness, and running negative thoughts. So we thought we'd cover that because we're seeing it a lot and feeling it maybe sometimes too. So anyway, Amy, if you want to start, you pick wherever you want to go to in that long list, and we'll process that with folks. And we welcome your comments. You can type them into social, and we should see them. But if not, I, it, Caroline's shaking her head. We will see them. So social, if you're seeing this live, and we'll happily have you participate with us. Go, Amy.
Yeah, so I've been hearing just this feeling coming up a lot, and it's coming up in a few areas, and we can touch on them. One of them is in management of staff. I'm hearing this a lot of the staff isn't thinking about work the same way that I thought about work, and just that stress and anxious feeling of how is the work going to get done if they're saying they're going home in 40 hours and busy season's usually 60 hours, and what kind of expectations and anxiety comes around that. I've also seen it with just starting new areas of your practice, whether it be in business process transformation, whether it be with technology, whether it be creating a new service line, leading up a practice is, can I really do this? Is this possible? Will this be successful? How am I going to show up? And then we start having these anxious feelings. And from a yoga teacher perspective, and I was just having this conversation this week with someone, that this is really monkey mind, right? When we get into an anxious feeling, our thoughts start going into what might happen, what could happen, what never may happen. And what's important is, and the reason they call it monkey mind is because the monkey is jumping branch to branch to branch on a tree. And when we are aware of it, that it's happening, we want to pull the monkey's tail back and say, this is not happening. This is not real right now. Can I get in the present moment? Can I be just in this, the reality of what my current situation is, rather than imagining something that may never be? And that creates a lot of anxiety and anxiousness when we allow our minds to just float around, and they will float. That's a natural human condition, but it's important. And this is when we know we are learning the skill of awareness. And that is progress, when we can be aware when those thoughts are happening for us, when we can be aware of those feelings that are happening for us, so that we can get in the present moment, take that as information that we observe, and then decide what to do with it, rather than getting ourselves wrapped up in the might be, could be, never be thoughts that are just going to take you down a spiral.
Yes. Well, and this whole idea that our inner dialogue, our inner thoughts, this monkey jumping branch to branch, thought to thought, you know, it is often negative,
Mhm.
and fearful, negative. maybe derogatory toward others, certainly judgy, but very questionable in its support of ourselves. Most of us have this inner dialogue that's pretty much sort of rib kicking us with either like judgy self-judgment, never good enough kind of statements, or like this what if I fail? What if I can't learn to make rain? What if I can't develop a successful new practice that they're asking me to develop? What if what if this client presentation doesn't go well, or whatever it is? And so just recognizing that you are not special, that your internal dialogue might not be your best advocate. That's normal, and it stinks. And I don't know why we were designed that way, but I think it's really important for people to know that. And to, I've taught classes before where we talk about this and people will say, oh my gosh, it is so huge just for me to find out I'm not the only one that has this kind of psycho living inside me.
Yeah.
That's a big relief, just to know that that's part of the design, I guess. And part of our life evolving as leaders is to try to shift it, recognize it. You said that, Amy, recognize it. That's the first thing. Hey, man, I'm giving myself a lot of negative, anxious self-talk. I'm engaged in it, and then starting to try to evaluate ways to flip it. And my favorite way, part of my winning formula, is exercise. I try to wear her out, that mean inner dialogue. I do. I try to make it so that she's chill, she's relaxed over there inside me, so that she doesn't generate as many thoughts because she worked out furiously, and so she's more more relaxed. That's one thing I do. But yesterday I was telling Amy this kind of, we did a meditation. We do team meditation once a week. It's optional, but a group of us got together and we meditated, and we used the Calm app sometimes. And it had a great meditation that was focused on not just like relax and breathe and let your thoughts flow by like clouds. It did all of that like normal, but then the guide suggested that we turn our thoughts to something that makes us anxious. And I thought that was so like wild, because they never do that, right? So they're always trying to have you, let those thoughts go by. Instead she was like, engage with it. So I think there's something I'm working on right now that's making me decently anxious. And so I went ahead and thought about it. And then she said, where are you feeling that in your body? And this is part of that awareness. You're breathing and you're thinking, oh, and for me, it was like in my chest. I felt tight, just a little more constricted in my breathing, a little bit more like an elephant maybe standing on it. And then she was like, pay attention, breathe into that. And then she was, saying things that we would all say to each other as friends and coaches. She was like, how probable is what you're fearing going to be to happen? Like, what's the probability if you had to give it? What steps could you take to mitigate that? If it's got some probability, what could you do proactively to mitigate that? It's typical business advice, really, or personal, success advice, but all in the context of meditation and recognizing, hey, I'm busy generating a bunch of stuff here that's unlikely, and I'm allowing it to give me physical symptoms, which is interesting, and we know this, everybody knows stress can manifest itself and make you ill if you work it up hard enough. But I think we all just need to recognize that we have some power over this negative inner dialogue that's generating all this negative self-talk.
Yeah. The other important thing to think about too is that a lot of what we hold inside is based on our perception of ourselves and our perception of others. And a lot of times those are not true statements. It's perception. It's not necessarily reality. And what I find a lot is when we've created that anxiety, there is a trough, is probably better, of lack of communication, that we have not properly tried to understand another person's perception, and we can make that up. A lot of times when, and I know Jen experiences all the time as a coach as well, when we're coaching people, there's this perception that someone above them may not think they're good enough, or are they, doing everything that person expects. But they're keeping that in their head and in their body rather than just asking that person, am I doing good enough? Is there anything else you need me to do? And most of the time, that person thinks you're doing a great job, or if you open it up and there is something that is a gap in that relationship, then you've opened up the conversation to know what it is rather than making it up. We will spend more time making it up and creating anxiety for ourselves than just having the conversation. We're afraid a lot of times of just entering into a conversation, just having a real palms up conversation to alleviate whatever those thoughts are that is creating that stress in our bodies or about other people. I mean, I was in a coaching conversation yesterday where it was actually, with staff people on the other side of them leaving before they thought someone should leave during busy season. The conversation, as we kept evolving it, was really, there was an expectation of those staff people coming in of what their work schedule was supposed to be. And there was a disconnect between operations of what they expected, but that wasn't how they got hired. And so when we have that gap and when you drill into what the issue is, it really wasn't anyone being belligerent to a leader. There was expectation set that have to be right-sized or dealt with, or how else are you going to have to deal with this gap if someone came in under the guise of, I only work 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week or whatever that is. Does that mean then I have to change business processes for offshoring or automation or hire more people? You have to have those real conversations so that you can proactively deal with these situations rather than let them cycle in your head. Or like Jen said, you start feeling it in your body. That creates stress and creates health issues at the end of the day.
And doesn't solve anything, right? That's the craziest thing. Now, I'm going to flip a little bit into like the fear part, okay? Because you were just on a really good example of like, my anxiousness is really related to the fact that I'm frustrated, maybe, that people aren't doing what I expected, but I'm not communicating my concern and I'm not really clarifying expectations. Inside every conflict you will ever have with any other individual, even if you never engage in conversation, but in your head you're engaged in a conflict, that conflict is because of some kind of gap in communication, 100%. So you can never go wrong by starting a dialogue, ever. Unless you're going to start it with something like, you are so wrong, or something. Other than that, you can't go wrong. But sometimes the dialogue is with self, and the fears are these kind of more nebulous possibilities. What if this happens? And what if that happens? Like, for instance, I run into it a lot coaching, I'll call them, newer or younger staff. They're getting their first performance appraisal, or they're getting another performance appraisal, and they're anxious, and they're like stress and dread and like, oh, I have to go meet and hear how I did. And I'm like, man, do you think you did horrible? Is that why you're stressed? And they're like, no, I don't think so. But what if they think so? I'm like, that seems like you're generating something there that isn't necessarily necessary. Like, what are you going to gain from that fear leading in to this meeting? Especially if you feel like, no, I feel like I've been meeting expectations and my review comments weren't that significant. And I'm getting deliverables out, and they've got me now, they put me on intern this year, and I got to train them. And, you're like, well, what's going to happen in that performance appraisal? Is there a surprise trap door where all the stuff you were supposed to do is going to pop out and say, like, and then they'll kind of laugh like Amy did, and they'll be like, probably not. And then I'm like, well, so what are you gaining by sitting around worrying about it? Mm-hmm. And maybe it would be better to just like write it down. So that's what I tell people a lot of times is, okay, you're running this monkey mind, fear, anxious stuff. Write down, like, here's what I think I did well, and here's what I think I could improve. And then you could go into that meeting, whether it's a conversation that you initiate or whether it's like your review or whatever it is, and just be prepared with some facts. And instead of this strange, anxious fear of the unknown, this nebulous thing. By writing it down, it really helps it make it more concrete. And you could sort of be like, look at all the stuff I did well as a long column. The stuff I know I could improve is pretty short. And like you could see it's very balanced and there's a lot you could do better, and you'll be better prepared for that meeting. I tend to run these like scary scenarios in my head. I have a daughter who teaches high school history, and she's a newer teacher, and they do lockdowns, and sometimes they actually have a bad guy in the building and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And so she texts and says, hey, I'm in lockdown or whatever. And then I go, and then I could run all this stuff, which won't help. And of course, prayer will help me, but also breathing will help me. I don't gain anything from running a bunch of fear, but sometimes none of that's helping. So then I will call a trusted person and tell them my fear. So that's another strategy I want to give you. And my trusted person is almost always my husband, but sometimes it's my middle child. It used to be my mom, but she's gone. And so my middle child, and because both my husband and middle child will take what I said, and then they'll be like, okay, how likely is that? And they immediately go into like, not making me feel dumb for saying it, but helping me see I'm way over on the crazy side of scenario development. Be back there. I call Brian, my husband, my ground wire, because he's just like, yeah, that's, how likely is that going to be? Let's talk about all the other things that are more likely than that. And that helps me so much. Yeah, we call that unhooking.
Yeah.
It unhooks me from those crazy, scared thoughts.
Yeah.
And you have to know who your unhookers are, because you don't want to go to somebody and say it, and then they're like, and what if this happens?
And feed right in. Yeah. Well, and the other thing too to think about is, if you don't have a person like that in your circle, what actions can you take to shift your energy? So do you need to get up and take a walk? Do you need to go listen to music and shift your energy? I know, it is important to realize what are the things that allow your brain to process in a natural way. And really being outside in nature is one of the top things that are always going to help, because it brings you into another world. And if you're not listening to music, you can be trying to hear the furthest leaf rustle or bird chirp and get out of your head. And what I have found in my life in those types of scenarios is I actually start processing things, and I'm not intending to, in a better way. Like, I come up with solutions because I'm not forcing my head to come up with the solution. When I actually allow myself to release from the stress or whatever it is, I'm able to give myself that space to process. So it can be a person that grounds you, or it can be silence. It can be whatever you need to give yourself space so that you can truly decipher, is this thought true? And that is the biggest question to be asking yourself. And if that thought is not true, and you cannot prove that that thought is true or justify that thought, can you let that thought go And what could you feel instead of that thought? Or what action could you take so that you don't keep having the thought as well, so that you can truly release that anxiety, so that you can see things in a clearer sense once you enter back into your day?
I love that. My niece, I'm on Snapchat and I have all these, family members that snap me and I get all kinds of fun stuff. But this morning, my niece Nicole snapped me a Post-it that she has at her desk. And it was, three things that she says to herself and that she wants to remember, and one of them was, I am successful.
Yes.
I am capable or whatever. She had three things there. And I just was so proud of her that she put those there because they're outside of her head. They're there to remind her. Another grounding mechanism is mantra or just that reminder mechanism. And I was thinking about, while you were talking just then, getting outside. And that's one of the reasons I love running.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a saying that everything's a problem before I run and nothing is a problem after.
Yeah.
And it's the truth. And it's because I stop. My brain gets like focused on trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
Continuing to move forward and do the miles. And it leaves all the anxiousness and lets it go. And so then that space you talked about, Amy, is there, it's made. And I can come away and think, I feel like I've solved that thing that I wasn't able to solve in any other way. And I didn't even think about it while I was running.
Right.
So it's weird. It's a weird deal. But both Amy and I really just wanted to be sure that we process this with you because it helps us in managing our own interpretations and negative thoughts and rib kicking self and all of that. And we hope it helps you too. We hope you'll take away some of these ideas and practice them and also share them with other people. The more we as human beings can sort of be in the present and be in the hopeful with each other and with ourselves, kind of the better life's going to be. So super grateful to process this with you today, Amy, and with all of our viewers and anybody else who listens to this recorded. We'd love your comments. We love your ideas. Share them with us in social. And Caroline, I can't remember if we're on. She thinks we are. We don't know if we're on. I need to get
actually next Friday we are not on, but the week after. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Okay, you too. Bye now.